Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Raville. I'm the Executive Director of the Harm Reduction Action Center. We're Colorado's largest public health agency that works specifically with people who inject drugs. We're located right across the street from the Colorado State Capitol, right where we should be. Thank you. Okay. So we've got a lot to talk about today. I know you ate. I know I'm getting the after lunch crowd. I gotcha. So we're going to talk a little bit, just a harm reduction 101 primer. If you leave here with nothing else today, I want you to know a little bit about harm reduction, the overdose epidemic, and the 7 pieces of harm reduction statewide legislation we've passed in the last 10 years. 4 to reduce the harms associated with overdose, 3 to reduce the harms associated with syringe criminalization. Harm reduction reduces the harms associated with X. Today we're going to talk in relation to drug use. However, we use lots of forms every day in every way. If people want to live a life of recovery, they shouldn't have to live with preventable diseases such as HIV and hepatitis C. If people don't want to live a life of recovery, they shouldn't have to live with preventable diseases such as HIV and hepatitis C. In a very magical world, there'd be no drugs. But we live here. And there's one safe thing that folks can do today. And I think many of us can agree that if stigma, shame, and incarceration worked with drug use, we'd have wrapped this puppy up years ago. All that's done is drive use underground, where people have gotten preventable chronic diseases such as HIV, hepatitis C, and died of overdose, so we're doing something different. We have prevention over here, we have treatment over here, we have recovery over here. Tanya would want me to say that. The criminalization of drug users here. I'm just talking about the life in the middle. This is the best breakdown of harm reduction I've ever seen. Abstinence is a friend of harm reduction. It's just simply not a requirement. What I also like about harm reduction is it's not what you should do? Nobody likes that. It's not parole or probation. How can I support you for a healthier and safer you today? There is something positive that folks can do today, and I think it's important that we all walk with folks for a healthier and safer them today. It's tolerant, it's accepting. We use seatbelts all the time. Sand in a playground, helmets, condoms. I know exactly what the kids are doing out there, right? Reduces the harms associated with X. People can use anywhere from safer use to managed use to abstinence. It's possible, and I'm really glad that the speaker before me talked a lot, because a lot of folks are self-medicating trauma. So when telling people that they're not doing the right thing and this is not how they should be doing it, that makes them not want to trust you. We want to engage with folks for a healthier and safer them today. We have black tar heroin in Colorado, which is difficult to snort and expensive to smoke, so you almost have to exclusively inject it. So when we're talking about heroin in Colorado, we're specifically talking about people who inject heroin. The average heroin injector injects 3 to 5 times a day, the average meth injector once or twice a day, and the average cocaine injector 12 to 15 times a day. We want to make sure they have new sterile equipment every single time to prevent and eliminate the transmission of HIV and hepatitis C and engage them in other services. We have syringe access programs in our state. It took us a long time to get there, people. 35 states and 60 countries have syringe access programming. I can assure you it is not revolutionary. It's just good public health. And if you've never been to a syringe access program, there's a lot of life that happens in there. We're creating a relationship with a very marginalized population that when they want to do something different, we're the first folks they come to. We're non-judgmental and compassionate. They have the opportunity to dispose properly of used syringes, access to sterile syringes to prevent and eliminate the transmission of HIV and hepatitis C, offered resources, referrals, naloxone, testing, engagement, and there's a lot of life that happens, right? We celebrate successes. I do need to say that one of the number one requirement for treatment in Denver, Larimer County, the state of Colorado, and the United States is that the person is alive. We are in the midst of an overdose epidemic. Dead drug users do not have the opportunity for recovery. When people are alive, there's hope. In 2018, we lost 68,000 folks in the United States to drug overdose deaths. Of that 68,000, we lost 1,000 in the state of Colorado. Of that 1,000 in the state, we lost 209 to drug-related deaths in Denver. Of that 209, we lost 23 publicly, meaning outside, in alleys, in parks, and in business bathrooms. It used to just be cops coming up on people overdosing. Now it's 17-year-old baristas who are being re-triggered every single day that they have to clean the bathroom before they go home, and they don't want to do that because they've come up on somebody overdosing before, right? we need to be able to push forward. Stimulant overdoses are up. A lot of people who use stimulants don't know that they can overdose. That presents a little differently, more like a heart attack, stroke, or seizure. And when I say stimulants, I'm saying meth, cocaine, and crack. There are 4 main reasons why people overdose. The first is the quality of the drug. The supply is unpredictable. Fentanyl is here. Fentanyl is not here like the East and West, but we were never too cute to think it wouldn't get here. Right? The second main reason is any period of abstinence coming out of jail, prison, treatment, living a life for recovery puts folks at higher risk of overdosing. The third main reason is mixing. So if you're an opioid user, you're not getting high anymore. You're going from minus physical withdrawal pain, the flu times 1,000 to normal or well. So you're going to put alcohol on board or a benzodiazepine. Those drugs are synergistic, right? It's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 4. And then the fourth main reason is simply using alone, by the very fact that no one's there to witness, recognize, or respond to the overdose. Thankfully, we have access to naloxone or Narcan. Who's heard of it? Wave your freak flags. Yeah, okay, Northern Colorado. It's safe and highly effective. Paramedics and emergency departments have been using it for over 40 years, which is really great if overdoses happen around paramedics or emergency departments. So it's important to have it in the hands of drug users first and foremost, as they're the true first responders in the midst of this overdose epidemic. And then third parties, people around people at risk of an opioid overdose. Mothers, homeless service providers, me, law enforcement. We can get access because we're often best placed to do so. There's 6 county jails that are currently training heroin users in jail how to recognize and respond to an overdose and putting that naloxone in their property for upon release, because those jails know that folks are 129 times more likely to overdose post-incarceration in those first 2 weeks than the general population. There's 200 law enforcement departments in the state carrying naloxone. Denver Police Department was the first. Colorado Springs PD was the second. And there's currently 470 pharmacies today in the state of Colorado you can walk into and get access to naloxone virtually over the counter. It's still a prescription drug, but you don't need to go to a physician and then go to the pharmacy. You can walk right in there today. So if you like data, you like public safety, and you like evidence, you're a harm reductionist. So part of the 7 pieces of statewide legislation we've passed in the last 10 years, 4 to reduce the harms associated with overdose. So we have a very robust 911 Good Samaritan law. Tanya and I are hanging out doing drugs. She overdoses, and in good faith, I call 911 and stay with her. We don't get charged for small amounts of drugs, and we don't get arrested. She goes to the hospital. I go on my merry way incentivized, because what happened for years and years and years is people ran, right? We need people staying and calling 911. We also have access to third-party naloxone. So it's not often a doc will prescribe something to you that you're going to use on somebody else. So we've limited civil and criminal liability. No one in the United States has ever been sued for using naloxone. So just let's put it out there, get HR. So this allows third parties to have access in our community, and then we also have that standing order, so not only can harm reduction organizations push out naloxone, but also pharmacies. We passed syringe exchange legislation in 2010. There's now about 13 of us in the state. There's not a lot of glory in starting one, I can assure you, but we know that Weld County needs one. Weld County, coming at you. And what we also know is this: 1/3 of law enforcement officers nationally will be pricked by a syringe at some point in their career. 2/3 of that 1/3 will be pricked multiple times. We've passed 2 pieces of statewide legislation to reduce needle stick injuries to law enforcement and promote proper disposal. So for the longest time, before we had these laws, my folks were catching 8 to 15 days in county jail per syringe, sterile or used. Well, that promotes improper disposal, right? I don't want to detox in the county jail, so I'm going to get them off me. So this says, before law enforcement pats me down and asks if I have anything sharp, and they always do, and I say yes, and they don't get pricked, I don't get charged. Nothing good has come from criminalizing the syringe. Law enforcement knows they can't arrest their way out of this epidemic, or they would simply already have done so. They're shifting more to public health in our community than some healthcare providers. We have often other opportunities too, fentanyl testing strips, we're talking about public injecting. But what we want to talk about is this, and next up I'm going to be talking about meth and benzos, the new power couple, and you'll find me in another place. So we're going to talk all about that, and people who inject drugs specifically came out with a couple of informational zines to make sure that folks have correct factual information. We want to make sure that's the only way that you can protect yourself is if you know how you acquire HIV and hepatitis C and protect yourself, and then also be able to tell others that as well. So harm reductionists, please join us for a healthier and safer Colorado today, because everybody is somebody's someone. Thank you.